I feel great joy whenever I lay a brick properly, which is in its perfect position with an exact amount of mortar, and the surface of the brick wall I make looks smooth and clean. Every day, one of my happy moments is when I finish building a brick wall and enjoy what I have done.
This is Zhou Bing, a young man in his 20s but already a master bricklayer. In 2015, he became the first Chinese bricklayer to win a medal in a major international competition of vocational skills. 3 years later, at age 22, he became one of the youngest deputies elected to the 13th National People's Congress, China's top lawmaking body.
One can make something of himself or herself in each and every occupation. I am willing to share my experience and skills with young migrant workers, especially those working in the construction industry. This is an era of great opportunities. If only we can work hard and love what we do, we can ultimately succeed.
But what was the young man's road to excellence like? How has he beaten the odds in his rapid rise in his life and work? Stay tuned to find out.
You've been listening to Footprints.
The verticality and straightness of this wall are okay, but the mortar between the bricks is not enough. You must pay attention to it and redo this section of the wall.
At a construction site in Changsha, central China's Hunan province, Zhou Bing, a young man in his 20s, is checking a wall just finished by a worker to ensure its quality. The construction site is run by the 5th Bureau of the China State Construction Engineering Corporation, for which Zhou works as one of its quality supervisors. You may wonder why such a young man can check and be responsible for the quality of various complex projects built by the corporation, the largest construction company in China. In fact, Zhou was a master of masonry before he was appointed as a quality supervisor for construction projects. In 2015, when he was only 20 years old, he became the first Chinese to ever win a medal in the field of bricklaying at the World Skills Competition, known as the Olympics of Vocational Skills. But how has he grown to be a master of masonry? Zhou was born in a village in the county of Xinhua, Hunan province, in 1995. He was a left-behind child raised by his grandparents.
My parents worked far away from home as migrant workers. I grew up in the custody of my grandparents. But during the summer and winter school vacations, my parents would take me to where they were working.
The visits and short reunions with his parents gave the boy an opportunity to get a glimpse of the outside world. The outside world may have been colorful and tempting, but his parents could not take him with them all the time. Having to live with his grandparents, who tended to spoil him like most Chinese grandparents do, Zhou was not well behaved.
I was very naughty in my childhood and teenage years. I didn't follow what my grandparents said or do what they asked me to. I was not good at studying at school. I often heard some villagers say that I would not have a promising future.
For many ordinary Chinese families, it's desirable for their children to perform well at school, obtain high marks in exams, all the way up from primary school to universities, and then find a good job. Though angered by his fellow villagers' comment, Zhou didn't turn his anger into a driving force for working harder at school. He quit school after finishing the 9-year compulsory education. Then, when he turned 16, the legally minimum age for working in China, Zhou made up his mind to follow in the footsteps of his parents.
My father is a bricklayer, and this played a role in my choice of work. In the very beginning, I had never disliked this occupation as many other people of my age had. You know, my family has been a bricklaying family. In addition to my father, my uncles and my maternal grandfather all worked in this field. In a sense, I have this bricklayer gene. After I chose to follow in the footsteps of my parents, I made up my mind to work hard, learn the skills, and earn more money to alleviate the financial burden on the shoulders of my parents.
But his parents were in doubt when their then teenage son told them he wanted to be a bricklayer.
They asked me again and again to inquire my true intentions. They said, "You should not regret in the future after choosing to learn bricklaying with us. You must stick to it even after you find this job too tough in the future." I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." So I followed them and began my life journey as a bricklayer.
Working first as an apprentice for his parents, Zhou soon distinguished himself among their fellow workers in the construction site for his unusual seriousness about his work.
In the beginning, I was learning side by side with my parents and my uncles. If I didn't lay a brick properly, I would do it again and again. There were some highly skilled bricklayers at the construction site where I worked. I paid very close and detailed attention to how they laid bricks. Then I would think through how I would have done it.
But Zhou was laughed at by some of his fellow workers.
They said, "How silly you are. The more bricks you lay, the better and more you can earn. High-quality bricklaying work will not earn you extra money from the boss."
The comment was supported by the fact that Zhou earned much less than many of his fellow workers, as he could only finish a small amount of bricklaying each day by focusing too much on the quality of his work.
I could only earn a meager amount of money which would cover my daily meals. For my fellow workers, they could earn 200 to 300 yuan a day.
Only earning an amount just enough to pay for his meals meant Zhou could only get 50 yuan or about $7 a day at the beginning. But Zhou had his own ideas about money and the job.
Frankly, I was thinking to myself whenever I laid the bricks, we were building houses for people to live in. If your bricklaying work was substandard, such as using inadequate mortar, water may leak from the walls and cracks may appear. Think about it and put yourself in others' shoes. How would I feel if I bought such a house? I told those who laughed at me that I would do my job seriously. I must make sure that every wall I build is of good quality so that the people who buy the house and live in it can feel safe and secure.
Gradually, Zhou increased his speed of bricklaying while continuing to insist on the quality of his work. He began to earn recognition and trust from his employers.
After I could quickly and perfectly lay bricks, contractors and bosses at any construction sites I worked at would come to me whenever a problem occurred in the bricklaying process. They knew I was the best bricklayer on site.
But still, the work of a bricklayer could be dull, dirty, and tedious for many young people. Zhou, who still hadn't turned 20, was not one of them.
It depends on what perspective you adopt. For me, I feel great joy whenever I lay a brick properly, which is in its perfect position with an exact amount of mortar, and the surface of the brick wall I make looks smooth and clean. Every day, one of my happy moments is when I finish building a brick wall and enjoy what I have done.
His skills and emphasis on quality finally made him stand out. In 2014, Zhou, only 19 years old, won the top prize in the bricklaying contest held by the 5th Bureau of the China State Construction Engineering Corporation. In hindsight, this contest proved to be the turning point for his life. Just months after he came top in the contest, Zhou was recommended by the construction company to submit his bricklaying work to the selecting committee for China's national team for the 43rd World Skills Competition. The competition was scheduled to be held in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo in August 2015. Zhou Guoling, a member of the Chinese selecting committee, was impressed by Zhou's work.
When I saw his bricklaying work, I knew that he was a promising young man in the field of masonry.
But the decision to represent China in the World Skills Competition was not easy for the 19-year-old. After being selected, Zhou was asked to undergo intense training that lasted for more than a year. This meant he had to give up working as a skilled bricklayer on the construction site and his monthly income of more than 10,000 yuan. In contrast, by choosing to train for the World Skills Competition, he could only get 3,000 yuan a month as his living allowance. Zhou forged ahead with the training, which proved to be tough and meticulous. The preparatory training for the competition was an eye-opener for him. On the first day of training, he saw over 100 bricklaying tools, many of which he had never seen before, let alone used. Moreover, instructors held geometry courses for Zhou and several other outstanding bricklayers chosen from across China. Having only a junior middle school education, he knew little about geometry. His lack of knowledge presented him with great challenges. To quickly make up for his weakness in this area, he asked his tutors to give extra geometry courses in the evening. One of his tutors invented some learning techniques that allowed him to easily remember how to read engineering blueprints and lay bricks accordingly. Sometimes, when Zhou really couldn't make the necessary calculations concerning the pattern of bricklaying, he was advised to estimate it using his experience.
My tutor gave me a ruler and asked me to observe and study it day after day. He told me to see and feel what is 1 centimeter, what is 5 millimeters, and what is 3 millimeters. After that, I took out a piece of paper and a pencil to draw these widths. After I drew the widths, he would measure them with a ruler. If what I had drawn were not exact, he would ask me to repeat the training again and again. Such an approach doesn't sound clever or efficient, but it worked for me, as I lacked theoretical knowledge about geometry.
Thanks to his diligence and excellent work, Zhou was finally chosen as the only bricklayer to represent China in the 43rd World Skills Competition in Sao Paulo, held in August 2015.
There is only one contestant allowed in each field of skills. For bricklaying, every participant must be 21 or younger when the competition is held. I was 20 when I took part in the Sao Paulo contest.
The World Skills Competition is the biggest and most respected worldwide contest in the field of vocational skills. It's held every 2 years. Representing a whole country in an eye-catching global contest made the young man feel a great sense of responsibility and burden.
I did feel great pressure. We went to Sao Paulo to take part in the competition. We were first required to lay bricks according to the patterns of a football shirt worn by the renowned Brazilian footballer Pelé. His shirt number is 10, but there were also some letters on the shirt. I first had to turn those patterns into an engineering drawing. This was a huge challenge for me.
The judges used scores of strict standards for evaluating the work, allowing no room for any errors in the whole process. Faced with the daunting challenge, Zhou didn't lose heart.
This was the first time I was asked to lay bricks in a letter pattern. I quickly adapted to the new challenge.
Measuring, drawing, cutting bricks, and mixing mortar, Zhou finished the work within the 1 day given. He was relieved and encouraged as he continued to finish another work, which was to build a brick wall containing the pattern of a football. In total, Zhou finished 3 works as required by the organizers, all with excellent skill and outstanding quality. Finally, he got a medallion for excellence, a breakthrough for China in the World Skills Competition.
I was very excited when I received the medal. I didn't let down all the people who trained and supported me. Our hard work paid off.
About 2 years after his achievement in the competition, the 5th Bureau of the China State Construction Engineering Corporation promoted him to quality supervisor. The company also set up a workshop named Little Bricklayer, enrolling Zhou as the tutor to improve skills of young bricklayers working for the company. But winning an award at an international competition and getting a promotion did not make Zhou and his family conceited.
他不会讲什么的。
My father said little to me when I told him I won the award. He's an unpretentious man. He didn't brag about my achievement. He just said, "Good." It's as simple as this.
Not resting on his laurels, Zhou got down to work in his new role.
以前可能就只要自己把手上。
In the past, I only needed to do my own job well, but working as a quality supervisor is different. I have to direct and supervise other workers to do their assigned jobs well.
The new job as a quality supervisor meant Zhou had to learn new things to further improve himself.
就是加强自己的这个理论学习啊。
I worked hard to make up for my lack of theoretical knowledge. In the past, I only needed to know bricklaying, but after I became a project quality supervisor, I had to know other aspects of an engineering project. Gradually, I mastered the necessary knowledge needed for a wide range of building processes, such as how to make a steel and concrete structure, how to build a module, and how to decorate. I can now supervise the quality of a project in an all-round way.
Over the years, Zhou has received a host of medals and awards bestowed by his company, the construction industry, and Chinese authorities. His achievement and down-to-earth manner have made him popular with his fellow workers. In early 2018, then 22 years old, he was elected as a deputy to the 13th National People's Congress, China's top legislature. He became one of the youngest deputies among the nearly 3,000 deputies to the national legislature. But how has Zhou been performing in this new role, and what is the significance of his being a national lawmaker with a rural and migrant worker background? Stay tuned to find out.
You've been listening to Footprints.
Venturing into politics, Zhou has had to learn how to fulfill his duties as a representative of the people. He visited former deputies to the National People's Congress and asked for their counsel about how to serve as a qualified representative.
感觉到非常开心的，因为我也是
I feel very happy about my role as a deputy to the National People's Congress. You know, I was one of the migrant workers. As a lawmaker, I can speak for them. With my help, some of their problems have been solved. I have a sense of fulfillment.
As a national lawmaker, Zhou has traveled to Heilongjiang province in northeast China, as well as the megacities of Beijing and Shanghai, to conduct field studies about migrant workers' working conditions and their concerns about their rights and interests.
权益保障，然后子女就近入学。
What I heard most during my interactions with migrant workers was the protection of rights and education for their children. Moreover, they want to be recognized and welcomed by the city in which they work.
Migrant workers, or 农民工 in Chinese, literally mean farmers turned workers. They mostly come from less developed rural areas or small towns and work far from home, often in megacities and developed coastal regions. This socio-economic group first came into existence in the 1980s, when China entered the era of reform and opening up, which has led to sustained market-oriented economic growth. For a long time, being a migrant worker was not something of which to be proud, even though they are seen as one of the driving forces behind China's miraculous economic expansion over the past several decades. In general, these hundreds of millions of people have taken low-paid, harsh jobs and lived in poor conditions, working in sectors like construction and manufacturing. Over the years, authorities have stepped up efforts to help migrant workers to improve their status, such as cracking down on not paying their wages on time and asking employers to provide better living conditions for them. Zhou, being a lawmaker, is working on this front. Based on his own experience and investigations, Zhou has made suggestions to the National People's Congress concerning vocational education and training for young migrant workers. As many migrant workers are approaching or even past the retirement threshold of 60 years old, Zhou says it's crucial to adopt new ways in the construction industry to attract young people to replace and renew the aging workforce.
If we continue to build projects in the traditional labor-intensive way, it will be very tough. It will be very difficult to draw young people into the construction industry.
Zhou noticed a new trend of building practices, as seen in the case of the makeshift hospital built during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in Wuhan in early 2020. Chinese engineers designed the 1,000-bed makeshift hospital, and then workers finished building it all within 10 days thanks to the use of modular construction. Zhou says this type of building technology is the trend and reduces the amount of physical exertion.
Modular construction or prefabricated building means you have already built and assembled the steel and concrete structures and modules in the factory. Then these structures will be transported to the construction site. Workers at the site only need to assemble them. As a result, many workers will only need to work in the factory, whose working conditions are usually better than the construction site. In this way, young people would like to step into this industry.
He goes on to call for more technical training for young migrant workers so that they can become skilled workers to fit in with the new trend in the construction industry. For himself, Zhou says he will never stop pursuing excellence in his work and life.
I am studying to improve my educational level. I am working hard to pass exams so that I can get an undergraduate education and obtain a bachelor's degree. But first, I tell myself not to give up my masonry skills. These skills are what can earn a living for me. There is no distinction between different occupations in terms of high or low, noble or ignoble. One can make something of himself or herself in each and every occupation. I am willing to share my experience and skills with young migrant workers, especially those working in the construction industry. This is an era of great opportunities. If only we can work hard and love what we do, we can ultimately succeed.
Unlike the full-time lawmakers in Western parliaments, most of the deputies to the National People's Congress continue to work in their own occupations when the annual 2-week-long national sessions conclude. Therefore, Zhou, who started a 5-year term as a state lawmaker in 2018, still works as a bricklayer and quality supervisor at the construction site. Of course, he needs to prepare for his proposals, which will be submitted at the annual sessions, usually held in March each year. He is now well known in China for his role to excellence in the field of masonry and his work in the role of a state lawmaker to speak for the migrant workers. But the modest young man says fame is not what he has wanted.
I don't expect people to remember my personal achievements. What I expect of people having a similar background to me is that they can grasp the opportunities and change their fate. This is an era in which everyone can make something of himself or herself in each and every occupation. Just pour your efforts and passion into what you do.
With that, we conclude this edition of Footprints. For our program producer Ying Xiuqi, I'm Lai Ming. Thanks for listening. See you next time.